Hey everybody, welcome back to Tim Travels. It's Terry, your host. So I told you in my previous video how my trainee saved me $1,000. So let me kind of continue that story because it gets that's the highlight. He prevented me from clipping somebody's mirror by just saying something to me. So I'm still here in Ashland, Kentucky, wearing my toasty warm Carhartt jacket. And a fair amount of snow fell here, so it's pretty interesting. And so we hooked that empty trailer, and we had a load we were supposed to pick up in Carthage, Missouri. Yeah, Carthage, Missouri, because we needed to get back here to the east because, as I mentioned, he had a doctor's appointment today. So that load was running over to the Columbus area, and Columbus isn't that far from here, so I thought, okay, we'll just take that load over and we'll go over to where you are. We'll go over to Ashland. So we get the trailer, we go over to Carthage to the shipper, and it's supposed to be a drop and hook, I believe. So we get to the guard shack, and this is a U.S. What is it? Frozen. Anyway, we get to the guard shack. I'm sorry, I can't remember it. And they're like, "Oh, well," and apparently this guard shack, like, they control like some different entities or something. So they're like, "Oh yeah, the people that you need to see don't come in until 7 o'clock Monday morning," and it's 7 o'clock on Sunday. So my initial reaction was, well, we could still get this delivered on time, and we'll just go back to Springfield and hang out for the day and watch some football or whatever. And oh, by the way, I predicted that the Bills would execute a beatdown on the Patriots, and that's pretty much exactly what they did. I'm feeling very good about the Bills. I think they are hitting on all cylinders. There were some other teams that looked pretty impressive in the playoffs. The Rams certainly did last night. I don't really have a good feeling on what Green Bay. I know Tennessee has done really well this year, so it'll be an interesting week coming up. Anyway, we get there, and so I send a message. I'm like, "Hey, this load can't be picked up until tomorrow." So then they said, "Okay, well, we'll take that load off." They basically asked, "What do you want to do?" And I said, I don't have any problem sitting. I'll just go back to Springfield and come back out here in the morning. Because, it's about, 60 miles over to Carthage. It's not a huge trip. And, that was my initial reaction. And you know how initial reactions oftentimes are the right ones? But for whatever reason, you start to question yourself, or somebody tries to persuade you of something else. So they said, "Well, hey, we got this other load and it pays more, and we'll still get you to Ashland by Tuesday." So they send it over. And the first thing is, it's not a load that was like super appealing to me. It paid more. Yeah, like it paid about $1,000 more, but it was about $1,000 more hard work. And so I could tell, though, that they were desperate to get this load handled because it needed to be in the Chicago area on Monday. And it hadn't been picked up. In fact, it was way past the window to pick it up at US Beef or National Beef out there in Liberal, Kansas. So against my better judgment, because then, I could just tell that there was just desperation in their voice. And, the messages were like, oh, this load pays so much more, you know, it'll keep you running, blah, 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 right? All this stuff that doesn't really mean much to me when they say it. So I was like, all right, I'll go get this load and then we can run it up to Chicago because we are a team, right? And so I get on the road, I head out towards Liberal, Kansas. So we get out there, and I've never been there before. And I was wholly underwhelmed with a lot of things. But the thing that was most disconcerting was the fact that when we got our trailer to hook out there, the landing gear was broken. And where we could see, what we could see was that the shaft that connects and basically syncs up both of the dolly legs was snapped off at the point where it enters the holder on the right side of the trailer. So it was just completely snapped off, that pipe. So we get a hold of RA and we're like, look, you know, we're already, because I was like, well, I'm still going to pull it out of here because, you know, we got to get on the road, but we'll just go over to Love's, which is nearby, and park over there and get it fixed. It'll be easier. So I get it, you know, we're able to get it over. And I should say this, the trailer was really high when I backed under it. So I cranked it down as much as possible and I was able to get it hooked correctly. And so the landing gear on the right side was off the ground a little bit. So, but the trailer was actually had a nose up or front up attitude when I was still connected to it. So I kind of scraped over this little cement strip and it was free and I was able to, you know, adjust my tandems, etc. So we get the trailer, we go to the outbound lane there of the guard shack and we go over to Love's. So RA's like, yeah, this guy's going to be out there in 90 minutes. The guy does show up pretty quickly. I mean, I don't know exactly how long it was. And he immediately gets to work and he's cutting a pipe to basically replace the pipe that's snapped. And by the way, before we left the shipper, I tried to crank up the right landing gear by hand just to get it off the ground, but it wouldn't budge. So even though it didn't have any weight on it at that point, I still couldn't get it to turn by hand. So we go to the Love's. The guy shows up. He immediately gets to work. He starts cutting the pipe to fit in there. And then he comes back a few minutes later and he's like, hey, look, it turns out that the right landing gear is just broken internally, like it's seized up, or the crankshaft, the screw shaft in there is you know, bent or whatever the issue is, and he can't get the landing gear to come up so he can sync them so they raise and lower from the same heights at the same time. So he's like, the only other choice is to cut the leg off. And he's, you know, so he's like, I'm sending a message. He said, you know, I'm just going to go get to work on it because there's nothing you could do about it anyway. It's going to have to be, that leg's going to have to be replaced. So cutting it off so you're not dragging it is not going to make a difference. And he did get authorization to cut it off from Road Assist. So, mind you, I had already notified dispatch that we had this issue, but that we had the trailer on our back. And so RA and dispatch both knew basically in real time that we had a huge issue with this trailer. Namely, that the landing gear was so broken that it couldn't even be fixed by this guy that had all the equipment to normally fix it, and that we just had to amputate the right dolly leg just to be able to go down the road safely and get over, railroad tracks and stuff. So they knew about that on Sunday evening. So we head up to Chicago, and RA was like, oh, well, we got a place up there you can go, because we were basically like, where do you want us to go? And they're like, oh, we'll come back to Springfield. And I'm like, this load's never going to get to Chicago by 1500 on Monday if we got to go to Springfield and then go to Chicago. And of course, even though I'm, the trailer shop in Springfield is pretty good, they're not an indie pit crew, and they're going to have to finish up whatever trailer they're working on to get started on this one. It's not going to be a quick process. And I've never worked on trailer landing gear really, but I'm guessing that's kind of going to be a pain in the butt to get fixed, to get the old leg out of there, get the shaft out. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just you pull a cotter pin and everything drops out, but I don't think that's how it is. And I knew that they would have to get the old leg out, get a new one installed, then get it kind of synced up and replace the shaft. That was not going to take 10 minutes. It was going to be longer than that. So, and I figured they might want to put jacks under the trailer and have me pull out from under it so they could work on it. I don't know what they would have done, but it wasn't going to be a quick fix, and Springfield is not on the way to Chicago. So we said, look, we'll get this delivered and then just give us a place to get this fixed. Okay. So we take it up there. We arrive on time, barely. We did take a little bit of a break. We got there right on time. And we got in the door fairly quickly. So then I get a pre-plan for a load going from Green Bay, Wisconsin to to Charleston, South Carolina. But because of the delivery schedule, we could have just passed right through Ashland here and gotten it delivered on time. The only problem was that the load in Green Bay was a drop and hook, and the trailer was already loaded. There was nothing they could do to get it to a live onload. And candidly, had we had to do a live onload, it would have been tough to get here to Ashland in time for Paul's appointment. So in the meantime, RA sends me the location code for a repair shop. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I plug the code in on a Macro 19. Address comes back to me. It's in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I'm like, you gotta be joking. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this code to go to Charlotte, basically? He's like, oh, well, after you deliver in Charleston, South Carolina, go up to Charlotte and get the trailer fixed. Except I'm like, well, dude, it's a drop and hook at the shipper. And oh, okay. And so then I'm still communicating with, at this point, my fleet manager, and he says, oh, there's a trailer shop it's like 3 miles from where I am in Chicago, and they have an empty that's ready to go. So just head over there as soon as you're done here. Okay. So I drive through Chicago, and mind you, I'm not on the freeway. I'm just on surface streets during rush hour because we got finished right around 5. We get over to the location where this trailer shop is. It's about 20 after 5, maybe 5:30 at the latest. Trailer shop is completely closed. The gates are locked. The pedestrian gate's locked. I don't even see any trailers outside or anything. Their hours are till 6 p.m. But, you know, yesterday was a holiday. So then I'm like, you know, by that time, it's night dispatch is on the job. And they're like, well, you know, see what RA says. And I'm like, RA has known about this trailer now for over 24 hours. And they have come up with no solution. They know that it cannot be set down. Well, it can be. It just can't be picked up right away. That it can't be set down, and they've known about it. What is me contacting them over and over again gonna do? Because they haven't come up with a solution yet. And my fleet manager was just like, press the I believe button and sent me to a place that was closed. Why? Because nobody bothered to check. Nobody did any follow-up. They're just, it's my job apparently. It's my job to figure out where to get my trailer fixed, figure out how to get the next load. So at that point, I was just like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not going to let my trainee miss his doctor's appointment. And I'm not going to tell you what the doctor's appointment is, but it's not some routine matter. I can tell you that. It's you know, it's a potentially life or death thing. So, and I had conveyed that. I conveyed to Team Prime, more than once that this was not just some normal, oh, let me go have a, you know, annual physical appointment, or let me go because I got, you know, a hangnail, or I got some rash. This is something very important and very serious. And I promised this guy that we would be there. So you know what I did? I was like, you know what? Fuck it, man. We're just going to go down there. And so I took my empty ass trailer that's missing a leg, and I drove from Chicago down here to Ashland. Actually, I drove to like Cincinnati. Paul drove the rest of the way. So here I am in Ashland, Kentucky, with a trailer that cannot be dropped. And has anybody reached out to me today? No, not one person. Not RA, not my fleet manager, no one. They know what the status is. You know, and people might say, well, why don't you contact them? And the answer is, you know, I've already told them everything that I can tell them. They already know what the problem is. And I've given them my availability time, because I actually, like I said in my earlier video, I'm getting a raise. I said in my earlier video that, you know, I told Paul just take the night off because we're going to run after this. But I shouldn't have to, like, figure out their job for them. I shouldn't. And when I tell them something once, that should be enough. I'll let them know if the status changes. But what I'm seeing is that, and you know, part of my problem, if you want to call it that, sorry, let's see if I can fix this. Ooh, that's quite annoying. Part of my problem is that, I'll just keep my hand up there. I was in the military. That's my problem. Because I expect that when somebody's told something and they're the person that can take action on it, that they're just going to take the action. They're just going to stay on it. They're going to be all over it like a bad suit until it gets fixed. And if they can't fix it, they're going to do a proper turnover to the next guy who comes after them who can fix it. But no one's done a thing. Everybody just, you know, punches out, goes home, and they don't really care at that point. They don't have a connection to the drivers. They don't really care about the drivers. They care about just like clearing their computer screens or getting stuff out of the queue or getting somebody to take a load. So I just need to listen to my intuition more often. And I should have just said, no, I'll go back to the terminal and wait for this load, and then I'll take it to Columbus. Because none of this would have happened if I'd have just gone with my first instinct. So I guess that is my fault ultimately. But, you know, I'm glad that I was still able to, and that I have the latitude to just make sure that my trainee gets where he needs to be when I promised him we would get him there. I don't care about the rest of it. You know, I care about being a guy that can that makes a promise and keeps it to a trainee, to a subordinate. And it's more important than money. It's more important than the $100 in fuel or whatever it costs. And I want to be that guy that doesn't let my trainees down. So, you know, I don't know what's going to happen here. I mean, but we're just going to roll out of here, and I'm just going to go ape shit if they try to give me a load tomorrow that's a drop and hook. Either that, or I'm just going to go drop this fucking trailer and hook up to a good one. And then the shipper can call Prime and go, well, this trailer's on the ground. And then Prime, somebody else can figure it out or ignore it like they've been doing. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Be safe out there. Sorry you had to hear about that gory amputation story. But take care, and we'll catch you next time on Tim Travels.